Good night, everyone. Johnson. I God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma Chair Spirit Divine. I'm here to give you a word on tonight. And the topic gonna be Joseph's dream, but God plan. Okay, God is still in the details. Um, this story is about Joseph. You know, Joseph gonna dream from God, God gonna send a dream to Joseph about his plan. You know, so Joseph is hated by his brothers, but he still told his dream to his brothers and his father, that they would bow down to Joseph. You know, they didn't treat him terrible. But then down the line they gotta bow down to Joseph, and they're gonna feel the guilt that didn't put him down in that pit and then sold him into the Egyptians. So Joseph also will be thrown in a pit, but rise up to be a ruler over Egypt. So sometimes, you know, God chosen one, or God prophet, apostle, you can't keep them down too long. You know, they throw Joseph in a pit, because they were jealous and they hated Joseph because Jacob loved Joseph more than them, made a special little role for Joseph, and Joseph was special. He had a gift. He had a gift as a teenager. This is when he was like 17 years old. He was he interpret dreams. God was giving him instructions and everything through his dreams. And he was so excited by being a little teenager, he wanted to tell his brother his dream. And they used to be so jealous, they didn't want to hear it. Every time they see Joseph, oh, there go the dreamer. They were just jealous of Joseph. So God would tell Jacob family to be fruitful and increase in numbers. Your deceiving will be a great nation. Now Jacob will die, but after him, his deceiving will be the Israelite. Joseph also promised his brothers that God will save them out of Egypt into their own land, Canaan, that he promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know, so this story will come from Genesis 37 1 through 11. So Jacob lived in a land Canaan. See, Jacob, he was already living in Canaan. You remember when I put out he was laying on the ground, and God said, the ground that you land on, you're going to leave this ground, but you're going to be blessed and come back to it. So Jacob lived in the land of Canaan already, where his father lived and died. So now Jacob loved Joseph, more than his other brothers because he was born in his old age. And the reason why he loved Joseph so much because he could have children. He prayed to God. Him and Sarah was in he was in his old age, you know, when he prayed to God for a child and he received that child in old age. So that's why he loved Joseph and Benjamin, because his wife died when she was having the last child, Benjamin. So them two children right there is very special to him. So Jacob had made a special role for Joseph. And when his other brothers realized the love that Jacob had for Joseph and less for them, they start hating Joseph. You know, they start hating Joseph because of that. They start hating Joseph because he can dream and he had a relationship with God at a young age. So Joseph had dream, and now this gonna be his first dream, and he was so excited to tell his brothers. So he told his brothers, and they hated him more, and they could not speak any kind of kind words to him, and their brothers, may not have the same mama, but they're still flesh and blood. They have the same daddy, and they hated him that much. Joseph said, um, that this is a dream that he's telling them. You know, Joseph said they were buying his own seeds. He always was in the field and grinding out in a field while sleeping gathered around mine, his, and it was all bowed down around. Now he's saying he in the field. This is dream. He said he was in the field, and there was gathering of the sleeves and stuff. He said all the sea was around him, and it was bowing down around him. That's the first dream. Now the second dream, Joseph said the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to him. You know, now he said the seven stars, the sun and the moon was bowing down to him. So now Joseph is telling this to his brother and his father. You know, so so then a dream that his father and brother would come to him and bow down. That was the dream about. Down the lines, the father and the brothers will come and to Joseph and bow down to Joseph. So his father rebuked him. You know, and then his brother said, "You think we're gonna bow down to you?" So then they didn't want to hear that. So his brothers hated him and were jealous of him, and his father kept that matter in mind. Because Jacob got a relationship with God. So he know Joseph is seeing dreams and stuff like that. So he know it's coming from God. And so he said, I'm gonna keep that in mind. Because he know if he dreaming and God bringing that to him, he know it will come to pass. You know, so the brothers would throw Joseph in a pit. After this dream, after Joseph had told him about the dream, talking about they gonna bow down to him. So now his brother is plotting to kill him. They just that angry, and just so mad because he's a special child. Not only Joseph not only Jacob loved Joseph, but God also gave him. He was 17 years old at this time, and God gave him a gift. So now they mad, they angry, and they plotting to kill him. So then while they in the field plotting, Joseph walked up, but he was so far away, and they said, "Oh, there go the dreamer." So they're saying what they want to do to him. But one of the brothers said, "Let's not put a hand on him." you know, and then they said, let's throw him in a pit. And that's going to come from Genesis 37:24. They threw him into a censer. The censer was empty and there was no water in it. So they came together to sell him. Not only throw him in a pit, but they come together to try to sell him. Now, just their own brother, so their own brother, Genesis 37:28. Now, the Mennonite, they came by, and his brothers, and they pulled Joseph out. They pulled Joseph out of the pit, and then the brothers sold him for 20 skeletons of silver to the Ammonites, who took him to Egypt. They took him to Egypt. Now then they sold their brother. Now they're gonna take his robe, cut up sheets, and put the blood on, and tell their daddy that Joseph is dead, that the animal ate him up. And now Jacob gonna think Joseph is dead all this long time. So this was God plan. What start Jacob, Jacob was the third link of God plan. Jacob been supposed to move out of that land and go to Egypt. And he never moved. He got comfortable in that land. God said you're gonna come back to that land, but he stood in that land. So this is all God plan. Even though the brothers threw him in a pit, you know, that still was God plan. To have Joseph, at Egypt. God knew someone was gonna come along and scoop him out of there and bring him to Egypt. That's what God wanted him at. Sometimes when God have a plan, sometimes God will push the issue to have you right where he wants you at. Even though they throw him in a pit, that still was God's plan to lead him to Egypt. He had to go ahead of them. And that's what he's gonna tell him down the line. Even though y'all throw me in a pit, but it's still with God plan. God still needed me to go ahead of y'all, to get this plan moving. So even though his brothers throw Joseph in a pit, it was all part of God's plan for Joseph to go ahead of his brothers to get God's plan in motion. So Joseph was in a pit, but he will rise up because he will be the ruler over Egypt. You see how sometimes tables can turn. The brothers hated him. The brother throw him in a pit. And then the brother's gonna sell him, but then down the line they're gonna come and gonna have to bow down to him because Joseph gonna be the ruler of Egypt, and he gonna be the one who decide to give them food. Sometimes the table will turn. So Joseph was thrown in a pit, but he will rise. He will rise up to the top. So now Joseph is a ruler over all Egypt. He's a ruler now. From being thrown in a pit, went to jail, then come out and being a ruler over Egypt. So remember Joseph's dream. What made them so mad that they had to just throw him in a pit. So his dream, when his brother and his father will bow down to Joseph. Now we about to see how Joseph dream about to come to pass. Now Joseph is now a ruler over Egypt. He had to rise from being placed in that pit. And now there are famine in Canaan. Where his father and brother live. And guess what they have to do? They have to come to Egypt. And guess who they have to buy down to the give food? Joseph. But there are food in Egypt. So Jacob said, well, if that food in Egypt, but that was God's son, the famine in Canaan, to get Joseph out of Canaan to go to Egypt. He refused to go to Egypt. He gonna send his children over there, and God will keep on trying to come up with ways. That just like me. I've been in this battle for a long time. God kept on trying to get my attention, speaking to me and everything else to let me know you are chosen, you is anointed, you all these things, and I did not know. I had to stay in that battle till I acknowledged who I was. And that's how Jacob, sometimes you can get comfortable where you are. Jacob got comfortable and can knowing God told him years ago that you have to leave that land. He got comfortable. God sent that family in his land to get get Jacob out of there. But instead of Jacob getting out of there, he sent his kids. He sent his kids along. So but he would leave, but there are food in Egypt. Jacob would send all 9 of his children to Egypt to go on buy food, but he left the youngest one with him. Remember, he got 10 children, so he left the youngest one. So he sent 8, because Joseph supposed to be dead. So he left the youngest, because the youngest one and Joseph he really loved because he had both of them at his old age. Now Joseph's brother arrived. So now they arrived to Egypt. You remember Jacob sent them to Egypt, go buy some food. We don't have anything in Canada. That was all God planned, ready to get Jacob out of the land. So Joseph's brothers, they arrived at Egypt. And when they arrived at Egypt, what they did? What they did? They had to bow down to Joseph. They bowed down. Like Joseph said in his dream. Genesis come from Genesis 42:6-9. Joseph is the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all its people. So everyone had to go to him to get food. So now Joseph's brothers, they arrived. They bowed down to him with their face down to the ground. So Joseph recognized his brother, but the brothers did not recognize Joseph. So Joseph pretended to be a stranger to them. He started speaking harsh words to them, just started being mean to them and telling them they're spies, but he recognized that's his brother, the same one that's threw him in that pit. So then Joseph remembered his dream about them. Because see, sometimes God will send visions and dreams to you, but see, God will never give you the full details. You got to figure out the details yourself as you go along. So he had his dream that they will bow down to him, but he didn't know what it meant. He didn't know. He was just 17 years old. So now they arise to him and they bow down, face down to the ground. So now Joseph said, okay, I remember my dream now about them. So now I see they bowing down to me, just like my dream said. So we see Joseph's dream came to pass. Joseph's about to reveal himself to his brother. Remember, he recognized his brothers, but the brothers did not recognize him. And they're going to come for Genesis 45, 1. There was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brother. See, he wanted to make himself known to his brother. He want to know what happened to his dad. What his dad? Because God goes to Joseph in his dreams and stuff. The whole plan was to have Jacob come out of the land and come to Egypt. But he son the boys. He son the boys. So now Joseph wants to know what is his father. He supposed to been dead. He never saw his father since he was gone. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. Joseph's 45 chapter 45 3. Joseph said to his brother, I am Joseph. He had to keep on saying it because it seemed like they didn't believe him. And they throw him in the pit. It seemed like they forgot how he looked. So Joseph said, I am your brother. I am Joseph. So he asked the question. That's what he really wanted to make himself known, to ask, what is my father? He said, what is my father? Are he still living? And the brothers couldn't hardly answer him because they were so terrified. They were terrified because they know they did so much evil stuff to Joseph. They didn't throw him in a pit, and then turn around and sold him. And then they lied to their dad that he was dead. So while they're looking at him and he's saying, I am Joseph. He said it twice, I am Joseph. And they couldn't even answer, they were so terrified. So Joseph told them to come close. He said, come close. I am your brother Joseph. The one you sold to Egypt. Now Joseph said, don't be distressed. See, he don't hold no grudge. Joseph said, the one that you sold, the one that you throwed in a pit, but he said, don't be distressed. He said, don't be angry with yourself because you throw me in that pit. He said, all this here, selling me because it was to save lives that God sent him ahead of you all. God wanted Joseph to be in that pit. God knew somebody was going to come and scoop him out of that pit and send him straight to Egypt. He had to get the God plan in motion. So Joseph telling his brothers, don't be distressed, don't be angry, don't be mad because you throw me in a pit. He said it was all God plan. God wanted me to go ahead of y'all. He wanted me to be in Egypt. This was everything gonna start at in Egypt. He wanted me to be in Egypt. He wanted me to go ahead of y'all. So he said, don't be distressed. Don't be mad. It's all God plan. Even though they throw him in a pit, it was still God plan to get Joseph to Egypt. So now we see the dream that Joseph had is coming all together. It was to save lives, and God had him to go ahead of his brother to get things started. So they throw him in a pit when he was supposed to be, well, they throw him in a pit. It's just where he was supposed to be in Egypt. And see, sometimes you be in a situation and you will wonder like, why I'm in this situation. I gotta rid of that situation. Here I'm back at script. Sometimes you weren't supposed to be moved. And sometimes God will fix all kind of ways for you to be right where he wants you at, to get the plan in motion. My life is that way. I was at one place and then I end up back with the same situation, and it's right where God had wanted me to be at. And just like Joseph said to his brother. He said, even though y'all throw me in a pit, but I'm right where God wanted me to be at in Egypt. So that's what he told his brothers. That's why he told his brother, don't be distressed. This is all God planned. God wanted me to be in Egypt, so he wanted me to go ahead of y'all. So now we see they throw him in a pit. It was necessary, you know, for God plans to have Joseph in Egypt. You know, Joseph had to be in Egypt to get things started. You know, by throwing him in a pit. You know, sometimes you go through so much horrible stuff just to get on the right path. You know, now he had to be thrown in a pit where they had no water in their system at all. You know, sometimes you got to go through so much hard trials to even get to your path where God really wants you at. You know, Joseph had to go through all that process, you know, to get where God wanted him at. So he had to go ahead of his brothers, you know, and sometimes God will touch some people's heart to do certain things just to get you where you're supposed to be at. You know, so Joseph, you know, so God planned for his brothers, you know, throwing him in a pit. God knew someone would come along and get Joseph and bring him to Egypt. You know, so now Joseph is in Egypt, all part of God's plan, where he's supposed to be at. And now God caused the famine, you know, in Canaan, you know, to get the second thing in motion for Jacob, you know, to go to Egypt. But instead of him going to Egypt, his son his kids, you know. Joseph said, God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant of the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. You know, so that's what God plan is about, saving lives. Something like what Jesus had to do. You know, save lives by a great deliverance. You know, that's a covenant he made with Abraham. You know, so Joseph telling his brother, it was not you who sent me here, but God. You know, that's what he had to keep explaining to his brother. You know, they were so terrified. You know, so Joseph said, he said, I'm telling my brothers, it was not you who sent me here, but God. You know, he made him the father to Pharaoh, the law of his entire household and ruler of all Egypt. So a lot of time, you know, when you get promotion, the promotion come from God. You know, God give those promotion. You know, he touched people hard to give you a promotion. You know, he allowed Pharaoh to give Joseph promotion, have him ruler over all Egypt. You know, so now Joseph telling them to go to Canaan. You know, to bring your father and your family back to him. You know, remember he revealed himself to them now. You know, because he wanted to know about his father. You know, the whole plan. God sent a dream to Joseph. You know, to I'm gonna send a family for Jacob to come to Egypt. You know, so he sent a family to Canaan, but Joseph didn't come out on Canaan. You know, he sent his children, so they had to come with part two. You know, to try to get Jacob out of there. You know, so now God told Jacob. God told Jacob in a vision, you know, God is telling him, don't be afraid. You know, go down to Egypt. Because it seemed like he was afraid, you know, because he been supposed to go to Egypt a long time ago after the first conversation he had with God. You know, so God telling him, don't be afraid. You know, go down to Egypt. You know, for I will make you into a great nation. You know, he told him this way before. You know, I'm going to make you into a great nation there. You know, so now God has said, I'm gonna go with you. So God trying to really get him to go. You know, he said, I'm gonna go with you. You know, go to Egypt. You know, and bring your family along with you. You know, he said I'm gonna go with you, and God said go with you, and I'm gonna bring you back again. You know, so God saying we gonna go to Egypt, but then you gonna come back to Canaan. You know, and Joseph's own hand would close your eyes. You know, so I mean he gonna die along with Joseph. You know, because see Joseph gonna be right there holding his hand. You know, it's just like God said. He said, you're going to die with Joseph's hand closing your eyes. So Jacob and his family went to Egypt to see Joseph, you know, because the brothers that told him Joseph is alive. Joseph is alive. He the ruler over there. You know, so they're excited and terrified at the same time because they know what they did to Joseph. You know, so Jacob and his family went to Egypt to see Joseph, who he thought was dead. but live. But he lived to see Jacob. Joseph lived to see Jacob die. So Jacob blessed all his children, and then he died. Then they brought his body back to Canaan. Like God said. Remember, God said, "Go to Egypt. You're gonna come back here." And you're gonna be with Joseph. He gonna put his hands over your close, his hands over your eyes. So when he died, Joseph brought him back to Canaan. Because that's where Abraham, Isaac, that's and his wife. That's where everybody's buried at. So Joseph would die, but give his brothers instruction. Now Joseph also about to die, and he gonna be 110 years old when he die. So Joseph said to his brothers that he's about to die. Joseph made a promise. Joseph telling his brother he about to die. Now he about to give them instruction. Because God still showing vision, dreams to Joseph. So Joseph made a promise. He making a promise to his brother. He said, God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land to a land he promised an oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Joseph also gives them another instruction to carry his bones up with them when they leave. So he know they're gonna leave. See, when God said what he gonna do, he gonna do what he said do. Because Joseph made a promise. So he made a promise because he know God came in the vision, told him, and it said God came in the vision and told him that this was gonna be done. So he made a promise to his brother. He made an oath to his brothers, you know, that God said he gonna come back and save y'all, take y'all out of this land and bring you to the land that he promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he giving them instruction. He giving them instruction. And this one, Jacob was in battle. That's when I had preached on that weeks ago. God said, "Be fruitful and increase." This one God had told Jacob, go to Egypt. He had told him a while before. When you go to Egypt, you're gonna your family gonna be fruitful. They're gonna increase in numbers. A nation and a community of a nation. They're gonna be all that. Will come from you. He said all this gonna come from you. It's gonna come from his family. He said all this I'm talking about a great nation, a great community. He said all this gonna come from you. He said, all that gonna come from you. And kings will be among your descendants. The land that I give to Abraham and Isaac, I also will give to you. And I will give this land to your family after you. You know. So so uh so God telling Jacob all this here. You're gonna be a great nation, a great community nation. He said, I'm gonna give you this land that I promised Abraham, Isaac, and I'm also gonna give it to you. I'm also gonna give it to your generation after you. Because see, this blessing is gonna go on and on and on. You know, so we see God is in the details in this plan. You know, and He gonna do whatever it takes to get it done. Just like Jacob's supposed to be out of that land and go to Egypt. He sent his kids, so God had to go to Jacob. Say Joseph. And we had to come with something else, So now it's time for you to reveal yourself to the brothers, because you need to know where your daddy is so you could get your daddy to come to Egypt where I need him at. So that's why he was so terrified after his dream. He was terrified after his dream. He know he had to. God told him it's time for you to reveal yourself to your brother because you need to get your father here to Egypt. And so that's why he revealed himself. So we see that the brothers hated Joseph. They throw him in a pit. Now Joseph told them about the dream that you're gonna have to bow down to me, and they were like, "Oh no, you think we're gonna bow down to you?" But then when they came to Egypt, they had to bow down. They were face down, bow down to Joseph, and they had to ask him for food. And see, that's what Joseph had told him. He said, not only his brothers. He said it was so many people, so many of these things was all around him, just bowing down. Because see, Joseph, he was thrown in a pit, but he rise up to the top. He is the king, the ruler over Egypt. And that's what his dream said. He said everybody was around him just bowing down to him. Because God will let him know you will be a ruler. You will have people around you bowing down to you. And that's what he was telling his brother. Not only everyone gonna be bowed down to him, but your brothers and your dad are gonna have to come to you for food. And that's just what they had to do. God, when God sent a dream, he gonna make it come to pass. It's gonna be just like he written out. Just like he written out. He told Joseph, he sent that dream to Joseph. There so many stars, 11 stars, and everything gonna be around you, just bowing down. He said the stars, everything. He said everybody was just bowing down to him. Because God was letting him know you're gonna be a king. You're gonna have everyone bowing down to you. Don't worry about them hating you. Don't worry about them disliking you. Don't worry about them criticizing you. There go the dreamer. Don't worry about them throwing you in a pit, because you're going to rise up out of that pit. And you're going to be a king or ruler over Egypt. And they're all going to have to come and bow down to you and ask you for some food. And his dream came to pass just like God's son it to him. And so his brothers, and when the brothers came, they didn't even recognize Joseph. But Joseph recognized them, because you don't never forget a face. They're gonna throw you in the pit and treat you wrong. You ain't gonna never forget. But they forgot. They could not recognize Joseph. And see, when they bowed down, face down to that ground, that's when Joseph had realized, okay, this is a dream that God sent me. And now I see the dream that I dreamed of my brothers. Now they're doing just what my dream said.